So this section is on the fundamental skills of Bard. So I assume that you all have read those descriptions of the skills in detail. So I don't waste time on read those descriptions for you. So I'm only talking about how you cast them, how you use those skills to make up your basic rotation. So first we need to talk about these three skills. This one, and this one. So the first two, based on the first trait of your choice between ice or fire, so they are ice 1, ice 2, or fire 1, fire 2. So these two skills have no cooldown, so which means you constantly cast them during your rotation. And you might notice that there is a passive skill called Flowing Music. It says that the fire 1 and ice 1 will give you a stack of buffs called the Flowing Music, and each of the Flowing Music buffs get consumed by your ice 2 and fire 2 will accelerate its casting by 50%. So that means if you have 2 stacks of these buffs to consume, the fire 2 or ice 2 will become instant skill, so you don't need to sing them. And another effect is that if the fire 2 or ice 2 consumes 2 or more stacks of the buffs, the damage of it will get increased by 25%. So that means in your rotation, you always cast this with 2 stacks or more buffs. So during your basic rotation without Mirror Heart, the rhythm will be so-called 2+1. 2+1 means 2 fire 1 or ice 1, and 1 is 1 fire 2 or ice 2. Say I'm playing ice now. The basic rotation is ice 1, ice 1, ice 2, ice 1, ice 1, ice 2. Yeah. And you might notice that I am not casting the ice 2 between 2 casting of my ice 1. I'm not casting ice 2 in the intervals. That is because I can cast it during the casting of my other skills. So why have I avoided the casting of ice 1 in the intervals? That is because the casting of ice 2 actually has a action time. And if I cast it while I am casting ice 1, the action time does not make any sense because it does not delay my next casting of ice 1. But if I am casting ice 2 in the intervals of ice 1s, it will make my rotation less compact because I can only cast my next ice 1 later. So the essential thing during your rotation is that you only cast ice 2 and fire 2 while you have 2 or more stacks of the Flowing Music buff, and you only cast it while you are casting other skills, including ice 1, ice 2, or other casting skill. So this is ice 1, ice 2, and fire 1, fire 2. We call this principle 2+1. So then it is the third skill, the Note Melody. The Note Melody is also a very major damage source of all rotations. It has a cooldown, and it consumes all of your fire strings and ice strings, or its official name, Flame Bites and Frost Bites. These strings have 2 sources. The first is your fire 2 or ice 2. That is, each of your fire 2 will give you a fire string, and each of your ice 2 will give you an ice string. The other source is your thunderling, which I will introduce later. So the Note Melody's effect will be influenced by how many strings you are consuming. Each of the fire string will increase its damage, and each of the ice string will increase its radius and restore you with some mana. And the mana will be consumed by your fire 2 or ice 2. So that is your Note Melody. And in principle, you don't need to worry if you have enough string for it to consume, cause its cooldown time is much longer than the time required for you to obtain the maximum number of fire strings or ice strings. So in your rotation, you just cast your Note Melody as many as possible, which means as soon as possible after it is cooldown. So these 3 skills, fire 1 or fire 2, fire 1, fire 2, or ice 1, ice 2, combined with Note Melody, are the major source of your damage in your rotation. So these are damage skills. Later is the buff skills, or say outbreak skills, or some constant buff skills. First is the Fire Song. Well, the Fire Song just simply increase your damage of Fire 2 and Ice 2, and interestingly, its cooldown is 15 seconds, but its duration of the buff is 30 seconds. So it's very easy to make the buff constant during your rotation, and you might just cast it as soon as possible. So this skill is simple. Let's move to the next one, which is the Thunder, or its full name, Angry Thunderclap. So this skill has a constant cooldown of 60 seconds and turns you into a status called Lightning for 20 seconds. If you are choosing the trait of Lightning Bolts, the duration will be 30 seconds. And during that period of buff, your casting speed will get increased, and your Fire 1 and Ice 1 will get a little bit of splash damage within a certain radius. The other effect of the Thunder is that once you turn on it, you will have full strings, which means 3 fire strings and 3 ice strings. This will be your only source of the strings opposite to the trait you are playing, which means if you are playing the fire trait, the Thunder will be your only source of ice strings, and if you are playing the ice trait, the Thunder will be your only source of fire strings. That's essential. So next is the Mirror Heart. The Mirror Heart has many functions. Let's introduce them one by one. The first is that it doubles the effectiveness of your obtaining stacks of flowing music. So which means during the 20-second duration of the Mirror Heart, your rhythm of basic rotation will change from 2+1 to so-called 1+1. That is, during your normal rotation, you are casting Ice 1, Ice 2, Ice 1, Ice 1, Ice 2, Ice 1, Ice 1, Ice 2. But if you have your Mirror Heart on, it will turn to 1+1. See here, 1+1, 1+1, 1+1. So 1+1 will keep you average stack number of your flowing music buff unchanged. And the second function is easy to understand. It just increases all of your damage by 20%. And the third function is that it gives you a prism. And the prism is quite tricky. The prism has a certain interval of damage dealing, and each hit will restore you with mana and have some side effects. So the side effects is determined by what elemental type you're choosing. So there are 3 types: the Fire Prism, Water Prism, and Thunder Prism. For PvE, we mostly don't choose the Water Prism because its effect is a CC, and we do not need to cast CC skills in PvE because all of our enemies or say mobs are CC immune. So we just choose between Fire Prism and Thunder Prism. The Fire Prism has a shorter interval and its damage is AoE based, so it means the Fire Prism has a little bit higher damage itself, and it restores you more mana. So basically, when you are playing some rotation styles not closely related to the Thunder status, which can be extended by the Thunder Prism, you just choose Fire Prism. And Thunder Prism has a longer interval, and its damage is not AoE, it is single target, but each hit of the Thunder Prism will increase your lightning status by 0.6 seconds. And if you are playing the Thunderbolt trait, which give you an additional active skill called A Direction, which you can only cast within your lightning state, you would be very willing to extend your lightning status. So in that case, while you have enough mana, you do not need to switch to the Fire Prism, you just choose Thunder Prism when you are inside your lightning state. So that is the Mirror Heart. So the Fire Zone, Thunder, and Mirror Heart. These three skills are also closely related to your damage. And the rest skills are mostly some functional skills, like mobility, CC escape, like CC immunity, damage reduction, things like that. So I won't talk about them one by one in detail, but I have to talk about two things. The first is that the Ice Melody in a certain rotation style called the Strings of Shang, or say the Icy Note Melody, it is related to your rotation, because it no longer gives you CC immunity, but it gives you the it refreshes the cooldown of Note Melody twice for you. So it is related to your DPS in that rotation style. And these three skills, I mean the first phase of Desert Ice, the Gentle Thunder, and the Interruption, these three skills have the highest priority, which means when you are casting conflicting skills, the game client, the system will automatically get these skills cast first. So when you are playing some rotation styles while some of these skills have a very long redundant action time, but by saying this I mean the A direction, this skill have a very long action time, it's redundant, you can use these three skills to cancel its reaction. So it makes your rotation more compact and increase your DPS. But you have to pay attention to the the dungeon mechanism. So if there are incoming mechanisms which requires you to use your mobility or CC escape or interruption to handle, just don't use these skills to cancel the action. And how to cancel this action I will introduce in the following sections of videos. Yeah, so these are the skills related to your DPS. And in the next section I will talk about the traits of the Astral Blazings, how these traits change the original effect of your skills, and how to match them, how to choose among them to build a rotation. Yes.